Hey guys, and welcome to the In Her Financial Shoes podcast. This is the first podcast that I have streamed live since moving house, moving countries. So those of you will probably look at my background and be like, "Where's your wallpaper gone?" I'm trying to figure out a way of. I've taken a photograph of my feathered wallpaper in the old house, and I'm going to try and get it onto a green screen so that it looks like I'm in the same house because I'm
I
missing my
love
background. But welcome to the live stream podcast today. And I'm really excited about today's conversation, actually, because this is one that's really close to my heart and one that we talk about often in our communities, which is about setting goals. And I really want to focus specifically today on how to set goals for abundance. And I think goal setting is one of those things that people either think, oh, setting goals is like really masculine and like, I set goals, but I never follow them. Or you're somebody who is like, yep, you set goals all the time in your personal life and in your business. And so depending on which camp you sit in, either of those, you're going to love today's podcast episode. And I'm joined today by the gorgeous Ellie Swift, all the way from Western Australia, who is a marketing and mindset coach. She is the creator of the Swift Marketing Method. You just have the perfect surname, Ellie, for this, like the Swift Marketing Method. And also she is a podcast herself, podcast host of the Shine Online podcast. So g'day, Ellie. Welcome all the way from Australia.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful welcome. Yeah, I'm really grateful for that surname because it's now used everywhere. And I actually just got married, and I had quite a few people in my community saying, "Are you going to change your surname?" And I was like, "There is no way I'm changing my surname professionally because it is trademarked across so many things now."
What's the new surname?
Robinson.
Oh, that's cool too. That's a very good surname.
It's kind of nice to have both.
You could double barrel it. You could definitely double barrel it.
I know. I did think about that. And then I was like, I'm just going to go with like best of both worlds.
Or use one maybe when you want to and the other one when you don't want to be known.
The only problem has been restaurant bookings. Like I keep forgetting what I put my name under. So I think I just need to make some personal rules. Like in my personal life, for everything I choose Robinson, and then I only choose Swift for business. Like I need to create some boundaries so I don't screw myself over.
It could be fun. I'm like that with my email address. I'm like, which email address did I use? My personal one or my business one?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on your recent marriage. I did see your beautiful wedding video that you put on your Instagram account. It was gorgeous. So congratulations. So let's dive then straight into this conversation about abundant goals. So when we think about goals then, Ellie, are there different types of goals in life? And if so, what would they be?
Yeah. So look, I think there are like loads of different types of goals that you can create in your life. And if I look at this through the lens of my life coaching background, my kind of automatic answer is to want to compartmentalize them into things like financial goals and, natural like categories within your life, health goals, whatever else. But ultimately, the way that I look at goals is that when you're creating them, you want them to be as simple as possible and as all encompassing as possible. And I think that if we get too caught up in creating like different types of goals throughout different areas of our life, it's just going to be confusing and we're less likely to stick to it. So I'm a big fan of like, there's just one type of goal that you go for and you make them happen and you have a couple and you go for it. The other way I would answer that is that I often talk with my clients about grounded goals versus your really stretchy goals. And I love what you said before, Catherine, about really speaking to that concept of creating abundant goals, because I think that ultimately, whenever we are goal setting, we want to do so through that lens of how can we create goals that are actually going to create really big, incredible change for us, that are going to allow us to play really big and think really big and step outside the box and kind of ultimately go for our dreams. And what I find is that if we kind of go for these like really, really stretchy goals, then we're putting ourselves in a whole, like, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to dream in ways that maybe we never have before. And I really recommend doing that if you have some evidence behind you that you are somebody who sets goals and knows how to go after them. The more grounded goals that I recommend for some clients are in no way less abundant, but I call them grounded goals because what I aim to do with clients when we're setting goals, grounded goals, is that ultimately it's for the person who might not have cultivated as much evidence reaching for the stars yet. And so it feels like there's a really big stretch between where they are right now and where they want to be in this lifetime. And so, if you're feeling that way and you create these outlandishly big goals, in my experience, it can almost be like a stretch too far and we get lost in the middle bit. And so, in creating grounded goals, it's going through a process to work out essentially how you can break down those goals so that you understand exactly what they look like for you and you can start to build evidence along the way that you can actually achieve the thing to then kind of take you into the stretch goals. So it's almost like the grounded goals are like the stepping stones on the way to those really massive stretch, big dreaming goals.
I really like that. And certainly on the podcast, we talk about small steps, small
Yeah.
steps that create momentum. And often, I love what you said there about it's hard sometimes to think about the big pie in the sky dream goals. And often I find that people struggle with,
Yeah.
well, I'm sitting here right now and this is the life I want to create over here, but I don't know how to get there. And so what you're saying there, Ellie, then is that the grounded goals are kind of the smaller steps to help you move towards those bigger goals. Is that right?
Exactly, because I so agree. I think we get really lost in the middle. And so, if we've got those grounded goals in place, it almost acts as like a bit of a roadmap that will help us then move forward. So, instead of just going, my dream is that I want to earn $1 million in my coaching business, we might go, okay, I know my dream is that I want to earn $1 million in my coaching business and I'm just starting right now. So, what does that actually look like in the next 3 months, 6 months, year? And how can I create smaller goals that are going to be almost like quicker wins so that I can start to build up an evidence bank of, yes, I'm the kind of person that achieves my goals, reaches these milestones. And then your brain starts to go, okay, we can do this. We can absolutely achieve these goals. We can absolutely tick this off. Let's keep going. Something else that I would say around that as well is that, and we might talk, you may ask me other questions about this, but I think a really big component of when we're setting those goals is thinking about how we really want to feel and how we feel now and the difference between the two of those.
So let's talk about that then. What's the difference between those two?
Yeah, so ultimately, like if you think about how you want to feel when you're really abundant. So say it's like if we go with the same example, like the $1 million goal in your coaching business. If I go, okay, how does it feel to be incredibly abundant? Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And if you think about that and it feels like a real stretch, from where you are now, like the concept, the idea of being abundant just feels really challenging, really tricky, then it's going to be so much harder to step through or like climb towards that goal if you're not embodying any of those feelings now. And so something I speak to a lot in terms of as part of that like manifestation process is to embody the way that you want to feel when you reach the goal now. So, how can you feel abundant right now? What can you do or be or create in your life to make you feel more abundant? I had someone ask me the other day, but how do you feel abundant when you don't feel like you have any money, like when you don't have any cash? And I was like, this is the great thing about the feeling is that so often when we start to explore those feelings, they're not necessarily associated with what we think they are. So I know for me, I feel so abundant when I'm like basking in the sunshine and I'm swimming in the ocean and I'm having a glass of wine in like a really beautiful glass at a restaurant somewhere. that would cost, I don't know, the equivalent of say 10, 15 pounds. And so we're not necessarily talking about like, if you want to be a millionaire, you need to find a way to fly first class. It's more, how can you create those moments of abundance in your life now?
I love that. I so love that. And there's a couple of things in there that really resonate with me. One is around the kind of all sensory participation, about feeling abundant and
Yes.
seeing abundance. Some of you listening to this will be very visual, and creating things like, vision boards, for example, I know is a really positive way of setting goals for a lot of women, because they can visually, see that on their office wall or in their kitchen or somewhere where they can visually step into that picture. And I'm very, very visual, so I really benefit from vision boards. And then you've got the other side, which is the feeling, the visceral, physical sensation of how do I feel when I step into abundance. And as you were saying there, Elliot, when you're basking in the sun, or having a nice glass of wine, or having a nice bubble bath, or treating yourself to a nice new skincare product, or something where you can massage your hands when you're sitting on the couch, in the evening. It's those kind of things that we often overlook.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always get people to do with goal setting is to do that kind of helicopter view, where you can actually almost take yourself out of the nitty gritty fear and anxiety around, I haven't got enough money at the moment, for example, or I haven't got enough clients, to, well, what do I already have in my life? Because of course, what we put out to the universe is exactly what we're going to get back. And just to give an example of that, and I'm going to ask you a question around this, Ellie, is like yesterday for me, it was a really big day for me yesterday. I was on BBC Radio 4 Women's Hour, which is like an amazing radio show over in the UK. And I was sitting there last night, and my friend said to me, do you realize like how amazing this show is? And I was like, I hadn't even taken the time to think, oh my God, like they have 130,000 followers on Instagram. And, it's a really big show. And the minute I started talking to my husband about it last night, I then had an email that came in through my Google alerts. Like I have a Google alert set up on my name, because sometimes when PR goes out, I don't necessarily know about it. And then I was featured in another piece of PR last night. And then someone sent me this amazing message. And then suddenly all these things started happening. And that wasn't because I was doing anything. I didn't ask for a testimonial last night. I didn't ask for a piece of media last night. It just happens. And I think sometimes we have to look out for those synchronicities when we're setting goals for ourselves. Is look out for those synchronicities, look out for that evidence that starts to support the goals that you set yourself. And what I was going to ask you, Ellie, is I know that for you and your business, you mentioned before we came live today that your goal in your business is $1 million, to have your $1 million year. So how do you work back? How do you work back from that big goal to setting yourself smaller incremental goals to make sure that you build that momentum?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I would say there is that this is not a goal that I came up with overnight. It is a goal that I decided upon this year based on years of creating those grounded goals that were like the stepping stones to reach this goal. And it was probably about a year or so ago that I started to truly embody the feeling of, oh yeah, I can make $1 million in a year. Like that's something that I can absolutely do. And once I started to embody that feeling, kind of similar to what you've shared just now, it's like everything started to kind of clock in that direction. It was like, oh, of course, this is going to happen. And so at the start of this year, I went, okay, I can see really tangibly like how we've essentially already made about 750 of that. If I look at projections for the year ahead and people I know are going to be in certain programs and those sorts of things, I can see that. And there's this like 250 that I don't really know about. And so I was like, okay, well, we can absolutely stretch into that. And so I set the goal, knowing that I could absolutely see like the practical roadmap of how to get there, knowing that essentially the gap was not that huge because really, because of those other goals, I'm already 3/4 of the way there in some ways. And so now it's just been about then going, all right, well, where's the rest of that income coming in? Some of which I don't even know. And I'm so fine to not know, because I know that's almost part of stretching into this, is like, I don't have all the answers, but I'm fully trusting that it may happen. It may also not. I feel like a millionaire already. And so that's fine. And so, yeah, it's been about them working out, like, what are the tangible steps? How do I need to keep supporting my mindset? So for me, it's very much like the daily practical work around checking in with my mindset, coming back to those goals. You mentioned vision board before. I'm with you. I love a vision board. I have one on my phone. I also have a script that I listen back to that speaks to how I feel when I have created that $1 million year, and how I'm already a millionaire and what that means and all of those things. And I think reaching the million milestone for so far in the business has also really contributed to those feelings. So kind of putting all of that together. And then ultimately trusting and allowing and owning that I'm in the process and celebrating the journey. So really celebrating that I feel like I am already, continuing to trust, enjoy, and really remove any pressure associated with like striving for the million, you know?
Did you create that script yourself?
I did. Yeah. So I create them quite often and I update them all the time. It sounds kind of weird, like listening to a voice recording that you create of your life. But I think that part of the beauty is hearing your own voice in
Yeah.
like such certainty saying those things. And so
Mm.
I used to write them out, and I've still got written versions, but now I really like just listening to my voice speaking those words, which is interesting because of the learning types you were talking about before. I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as like an auditory learner predominantly. I'm more a visual learner.
Mm.
But there's just been something about it. It's almost like I can have that playing and I feel like it seeps into my subconscious, even if I'm not really consciously listening to it. And I know there's so much research around that being a truth. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been just updating it as I go, and I spend a lot of time like focusing on the feelings
Mm.
in that story, in that script. So, yeah, how I feel as though it's happened already, like what I feel in my body, what I'm surrounded by, my reality,
Mm.
all of those things.
And someone's asked in my audience actually, as you said that, Ellie, it's like, I want £1 million script. How do I get started? So how would somebody get started I mean, from what you were just saying there, it's, if you can visualize, for me anyway, if I can visualize what my future looks like and I can bring in all elements of sensory participation, smells, who's around me, what do I see, what do I feel, what do I hear, that for me, I would probably just sit and write out a story of what my future life looks like,
Yeah.
and create a script from what feels right for me. But talk us through how you went through that process, Ellie.
Look, it's really similar to that. And I think the biggest thing for me is that I like to do them like reasonably frequently. So I always like to go kind of 6 months to a year ahead so that I can think it, so that we can speak to, those grounded goals as the stepping stones. And I can really like see and feel into what that looks like. Some
Mm.
people can see where they're at 5 years from now. I cannot. Like I can kind of get a rough picture, but it's much harder for me to see 5 years from now. Whereas if someone says to me, do you know where you are and what you'll be doing this time next year? That I can kind of visually see and connect with a lot more. And so I usually do it once a year and I'll update it if I feel the need to. And it's just a process of at the start of the year, or you could even do it right now. We're technically still mid year, and just scripting out predominantly how I feel when I've created that thing. Sometimes what I do, and my current script is this, is it's just like a day in the life. So I wake up, this is where I am, this is what I see, this is what I smell, this is what I taste, this is how I feel at my core. I go out and do this, for me, it's I like walk out my front door at a certain hour. I do an ocean walk and then I go for an ocean swim and I feel the salt on my skin and I can like breathe big, deep belly breaths that feel really expansive. And there's, no sense of anxiety in my body because I'm relaxed and my family are happy and safe and healthy. And just all of those things that make me feel like, oh yes, this is everything I want right now. Fun story on that. The ocean walk thing, when I first started doing this, that was a biggie for me. I knew that we wanted to buy a house by the ocean. And I was picturing that and going, yes, this is so something we want to do. And I started doing these scripts and I scripted out exactly what that looked like walking by the ocean and how it would feel and all of those things. And I kind of forgot about that first script. And then I found it about 6 months after because I, stopped doing it and whatever. And I was like, oh, wow, like everything about this is my reality right now. And almost all the scripts that I've done since, that was the first one where it was like, oh, this is so powerful. I must continue with this. And every single script since, there are always big components of it where it comes through and it's created. And sometimes it's even better than you might have imagined.
Yeah. Oh, I just like every time I hear someone talking about what they're visualizing, it just makes me feel really great. Like I remember at the start of this year and I talked about this a couple of weeks on the podcast, it was my first real experience of manifestation. Because I've always said to myself, like, I'm not very woo-woo, but actually I think I am quite woo-woo. I'm kind of like the secret woo-woo financial coach. But I remember at the start of this year, my husband and I went for a walk and it was January the 1st. So it was freezing cold and we were with the boys and we were with our new puppy at the time. And I just remember us talking about like, what do we want from our life? It was a very nice, happy, easy conversation. And we talked about moving back to Jersey. And now having moved here last week, sitting here, and I'm literally, my house is like 2 minutes from the edge of a cliff, which looks over the lighthouse. And 4 weeks ago, when I did a visualization technique for myself, I literally came to that lighthouse and I was there with a group of women and we were on a retreat and we were celebrating our successes. And, that for me was stepping into my future. So watch out, guys. I'm going to be offering some retreats over in Jersey, definitely, because it's just such a beautiful place. But it really felt like the first time in my life where I'd put out what I wanted to, what we wanted to create in our life. And now we're living it. And it's just, it feels so full of positivity and abundance. Whereas abundance previously, I used to attach or connect to it being woo-woo, things being woo-woo. And I think what we've spoken about today is that goal planning, setting goals, is about setting goals where you can create that abundance, that feeling good about your life. And so this has just been a really great conversation today, Ellie.
So much.
Just one other question. What do you find from the work that you do with entrepreneurs? I know you work with a lot of really successful entrepreneurs in Australia. From the work that you do, what would you say are like the biggest challenges for people that are setting goals, or challenges, or like, is that practical challenges or is it mindset challenges?
Yeah, so the ones that come up for me are mindset challenges. I would say the first one is not backing yourself when you create that goal, like creating the goal and then kind of immediately deciding that it's just so outlandish that it could never possibly happen, and therefore not backing yourself, not deciding that you're all in. Like, the second step that needs to come after creating your goal is deciding that it is going to happen. And that sounds so obvious, but as I'm sure you see all the time, Catherine, it's like, it's really not like that. That whole concept of actually getting behind the thing that you're deciding you're creating is essential. No hoping, no wishing, no, oh, maybe. It's like, no, we're deciding, we're going for that. That's our reality soon. And so I would say that is the biggest thing. The second thing that comes up for me, probably more practical, is not then breaking down the actions and not immediately taking the first action. So there's science around the fact that after we create our goals, we want to take immediate action on something to start that flow of momentum. And then the third thing I would say is that feeling piece that we spoke to, the not considering what the feelings are that you're wanting from that goal, not essentially asking yourself why you want what you want, because when you know the why behind it, you're obviously so much more connected to it. And I'm sure, even though we're new friends, I am so sure that you teach as a financial coach, like understanding why people want that money and knowing, what it is that they're going to do with that money. And I just think that, especially when it comes to financial goals, it's so essential that we're considering that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time when it comes to money specifically, is people will set a goal, like I want to make six figures in my business, but there's no meaning or purpose to six figures. They'll just pluck it out the air, like, oh, everybody else is going for six figures, so that's what I'm going to go for. So one of our golden rules on the podcast is give every pound a purpose.
Yeah.
Because when you give every pound a purpose, then you can start to align it to your goals, your values, your purpose, your why, what you want to do in life. But often I find one of the challenges is comparisonitis. We just look at what everybody else is doing and we think, oh, yep, that person looks really happy, so I'm going to go and do what they're doing.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work like that. We've all got different soul journeys, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Ellie, you moved from a very corporate background, didn't you, into now running a really successful business. Did you follow the same approaches to go from employed to self-employed? And what did that journey look like?
Yeah, so no is the short answer. I had a really linear trajectory into my employed life. So I was a good girl who got straight A's, and I went to uni, and then I started my marketing career, and I climbed up, the ladder, and did what I was told, and was good, and all of those BS things. Got bored very quickly. Got reached head of marketing strategy role at the age of 27, and felt incredibly unfulfilled. Felt incredibly guilty for feeling incredibly unfulfilled because, of course, the privilege of being like, oh, I've got everything I thought I wanted. And I had been, you know how they say, follow the breadcrumbs of the things that you are researching when no one's watching?
Yeah.
I was stalking people who were talking about personal development. And I was so fascinated by mindset and psychology, and I started seeing these coaches who were all supporting people to, do these life-changing things. And so I studied life coaching, and that was my first foray into coaching. And I started teaching or supporting people as a life coach. And very quickly it was like, hang on, you've got 10 years experience in business world, please help with that. And I quickly recognized my niche came about because when I started working with small business owners around their marketing, the biggest thing that was coming up were mindset challenges, like fear of being seen and fear of being visible, fear of showing up, fear of rejection, all of those things. And so at the time, I feel like a lot of people are doing mindset and marketing now, but at the time I didn't know anyone else who was doing mindset and marketing. And I blended those two together. And then I started building my business from there. So fully booked quite quickly one-to-one, and then transitioned into a mastermind model, and grew from there.
Wow, so many synchronicities in our story, actually, Ellie.
Yeah.
I was in corporate, very bored, got very bored very easily. Felt like I shouldn't be disappointed because I was doing really well, but didn't feel fulfilled. Yeah, so many synchronicities there, and I definitely think there'll be a whole bunch of people listening to this that will feel exactly like that too. And so, if there was one thing that one tip or one suggestion that you could leave people with to help move them forward in some way towards creating more abundant goals, what would that be, Ellie?
I think based on everything that we've talked about, I would say back yourself, believe in yourself, really prioritize your goals, because everything else is going to come first right now. Kids, partner, corporate career, if that's where you are, everything else will come first. But if you don't prioritize this and back yourself and decide that this gets a moment in the spotlight, those dreams will forever be is sitting on the shelf collecting dust. And so prioritize it, share it with the people that love you, back yourself, go all in and make it happen, because as cliche as it is, life really is short. So we need to make those changes when we're feeling cold.
Yeah, what a wonderful way to finish the podcast. And final question, Ellie,
Yes.
what's your top 3 business books that have supported you in your journey?
Top 3 business books. Okay, so I always recommend Big Magic by Liz Gilbert. I love that book so much. Just creative masterpiece. Oh my gosh, I feel like, when your head is exploding with all of the potential business books that you're like, I can't pick one. The Blue Ocean Strategy is a book that I really, really love. Lesser known, epic book. If you're interested in that. Anything by Seth Godin would be my third one.
Marketing legend, Seth Godin.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Amazing. Big Magic is one that I've read probably about 16 times, I reckon.
I gift it to everyone.
Yeah, it's a great book. Definitely go and read that, guys, if you haven't read it. And finally, Ellie, if anybody would like to connect with you, obviously you have your podcast, the Shine Online podcast. But if they want to connect with you, where would be the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, so absolutely. Shine Online with Ellie Swift. Come on over. If you're here, you're obviously a podcast listener. So I'm over there interviewing amazing humans. In addition to that, my website is ellieswift.com, and come have a chat with me and let me know what you loved about this episode. I'm always up for a chat on Instagram at Ellie H Swift.
Great stuff. If you're listening live today, maybe just take a screenshot of the interview and drop it on your Instagram stories. We'll share it on our feeds as well. Thank you so much, Ellie, for joining us all the way from the other side of the world. Australia is one of my favorite countries. My dad and my twin brother live over on the East Coast, the opposite side of the country, but it's just a beautiful place. And lots of love to you, and let's hope that travel will be extended out very soon so that we can start to reconnect again face to face.
Yes, I would love that, and we'll have to get you on my podcast very shortly as well. I would love to chat more. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you. Take care. Thanks for listening, guys.
Pleasure. Bye.